Okay, here we go in calculating the rod, the optimal rod length. This is one recommendation that I have for you, is that you go ahead and you lay out, whether you do it in Fusion or you build your machine and then check the dimension, is the dimension that I want to find is the one that goes from the inside of one magnetic ball to the inside of the other magnetic ball. That dimension I take and I multiply somewhere between 1 and 1.2, right? It's all a compromise. The shorter the rods are, the more Z height that you have. The longer the rods are, the more XY you have movement. So it's kind of a compromise. This is where I've settled in for the Berry Bot Pro, and right at about 1.08. So I find that to be a really nice compromise. So the critical dimension is between the clear dimension between one magnetic ball and right across from it the other magnetic ball. So you can do it on any of the three sides. Incidentally, this is what I call the bottom fascia and the top fascia. These are X, Y, and Z columns on a Delta printer, for those of you that are still researching. Anyways, yeah, that works out really good, right around 1.1. Okay, this is for you aspiring newbies to 3D modeling. If you already know how to model or you've played around with it, go get a cup of coffee. This is for the new guys. This is going to substantially, if you can memorize this, commit it to memory, make this list, put it on your mirror in the bathroom and just memorize this. It's going to substantially help you, hopefully, alleviate a lot of the frustration that people have getting started with 3D modeling. Okay, these are going to be 6 things to remember. Number 1 is that we need to start on a face or plane. Okay, number 2 is going to be start a new sketch. Number 3, draw our geometry. Number 4, tie the geometry to the origin. Number 5, add relations. And number 6, create features. Okay, these are the 6 things that you just have to memorize, and this is the order in which we do it most all the time. Okay, and to explain it a little further, what I'll do is I'll draw this as the origin. This is your X plane. This is Y. And this is Z. So most often you would start your geometry, start drawing your geometry on one of these 3 planes. It could be the XZ plane, it could be the XY plane here. So this would be the XY. There. This would be the YZ plane, or the one coming off of these 2 would be the XZ plane. So quite often you're drawing on one of those 3, but you could also be drawing on, if you have a piece of geometry that's already, or part of your model that's already been modeled, it could be a planar face off of the model. Let's say a face rather, off of the model that you want to draw on. So if you wanted to draw, let's say, a circle, you could go ahead and pick the XY plane and draw your circle here, on the XY plane, but you could also draw your circle here. Okay, so that's the very first thing. Start a new sketch and then draw your geometry on a face or plane. Then tie it to the origin. And by tying it to the origin, there's a couple ways you can do that. One is to add relationships. In other words, you could make this center of this coincident with the origin, in which case it would move it and lock it right over the origin. Or you could use a dimension. So you could use a dimension to go ahead and locate your geometry. Relationships could be anything like this line's equal to this line, you know, which is equal to this line. It could be that this line is parallel with this line. It could be that this line is perpendicular to that line. Those are relationships. So that helps lock your model down. When you get into speed modeling, you kind of forget about a lot of this stuff. But when you want to learn and do it correctly at the beginning and precisely, this is the order that you need to do it. The very final thing, which is the most exciting part of 3D modeling, is to create features. And that's where you may go ahead and pull the circle that you drew on this plane. You may go ahead and pull it up and turn it into a cylinder. You know, if you drew a square on this plane, you may turn that square into a cube. Okay, so that's a feature. You know, and there's many more features. You could end up you can mirror objects. You can loft between two different sketches. You can do rotation, all kinds of things with features, and that's where you really turn your sketches into a three-dimensional model. But this is the thing I wanted to get across to you. Are these things right here most important to get in your memory and just follow this as a guide every single time? It's quite often students, something's not working, it's because they didn't do or think about one of these. So anyways, I hope that gives you a start, and 3D modeling is so exciting now. You know, when I was a kid in college and I was working at an architectural firm, and they had just put in place a CAD system, computer-aided CAD system. It was all 2D stuff using AutoCAD, and they had a huge room with computers in there that were all climate controlled and everything. And the owners of the company spent like $200,000 for this thing. And you know, I look at what we've got nowadays, you know, free in the case of Onshape or Fusion 360, and it's just, we live in an unbelievable time right now, and it's really exciting. So take advantage of the tools that you have out there, and it'll really expand your mind, you know, into what's possible. You'll have an idea, you can just go model it, you can go print it, and you can start playing with it, and hope it helps out. As you get started with 3D modeling, I think it's really important to have a big picture of what we're going to do. And that's the reason I really stress these 6 items. One thing to also consider and keep in mind is that every bit as powerful as extruding a sketch, we can also perform cuts. And so just like in real world manufacturing, we have additive and subtractive, we have the same thing in 3D modeling. And that's something that's really powerful and something to always keep in mind. There's many ways to attack a project, and sometimes removing material from your model is just every bit as powerful. Hey guys, here we are over at the computer, and I just wanted to show you a couple of things real quick. By the way, this is a new spool holder that I was working on, a new design. I had some ideas I wanted to try out. Anyways, this is the new Platen, the new cast 3/8 inch cast Platen. And if you're wondering how to get this model into Simplify 3D, what you can do is go up here to Tools and Options and go over to Machine. And right here you can point to an STL model of your Platen. So whether it's the Berry bot or any other machine, you can go ahead and model up a Platen specifically for your machine and put it in here. Now, one trick or one clue I'm going to give you is be sure not to have any spaces in the file name. That tends to screw it up. Another thing is you can find, you can look for the location. One other thing, since we're here, I wanted to show you is in regards to the first layer. You know, quite often when you're printing really thin layers, let's say 50 micron or so, I don't do it very often, but when I do, something that's a little trick is you can go in the options for the settings. You may not have ever paid any attention to it, but if you go to the G-code tab, you'll notice that there's global G-code offsets. This can be kind of handy to lower this down for the reason that, let's say you're printing a 50 micron layer model. What you can do is go into your first layer height and bump this up to, let's say, 300%. So 300% of your 50 micron would be 150 micron. Then what you can do is go into this G-code offset and you can bring the z-axis down. Let's say you may not go all the way, you know, of 100 micron, but you may go bring it down, let's say 70 micron or so. And what that'll do is help pack the first layer and increase the layer height so that the first layer is not actually going to be 50 micron. That sometimes can be really helpful and might give you some ideas of ways to better get that first layer when doing, you know, really fine thin layered models. Okay guys, here we are over on my workbench. I'm going to show you the process for filling these little guys up. One word of warning is to be sure to do it in some kind of a container. I once dropped a small container of these things in my garage and I'm still finding them, so it's a good idea to do this this operation in some sort of container. But you just go ahead and you just pour them in. By the way, this is number 9 size shot. I like the really fine stuff. Sometimes it's difficult to find more something that's smaller than 9, but this is much better than like a number 4 size shot. So if you can get number 10 or 12, that would be better yet. I think when I was looking it up at Cabela's, this was the smallest I could get at the time. Then what we'll do is we'll go ahead and I'm going to mix up some 5-minute epoxy here. And we'll put it in an icing bag. I like using these icing bags anytime I'm working with epoxy. I almost always grab my icing bag. I buy all my epoxies and resins from Aero Marine. They're in San Diego, California, but they make some pretty nice product. If you're doing many of these, you might do it in steps if you're going to use 5-minute, you know, smaller quantities, because sometimes this stuff will set off pretty fast if you mix up large batches of it. Hey guys, I'm over here at one of my favorite tools that I've ever built. This is my 2x72 belt grinder. I'm going to go ahead and use this. Of course, you know, you could use just a sheet of sandpaper. to grind off the extra epoxy on these things. I'll go ahead and switch this out quickly. Now that made really quick work of it. We'll go ahead, clean it up, blow it off, and then put some rubber on the bottom. Okay guys, I've hacked out a bunch of the rubber, and I've got some adhesive, some double-sided adhesive material that I'm going to use to glue this stuff down. This is just it's a 3M acrylic adhesive that has a Mylar on it. I've got a bunch of it, so I'm just going to utilize this. I'll go ahead and I'll just put all the rubber pieces on here, trim them out. Probably be better to use some adhesive that's clear, but that's okay, this will work. So I won't bore you with doing all of them, but that's kind of the idea, and it stays really nice. I wish you guys could feel this. It's really feels substantial. Okay, I've got this project all finished up, and this is how it turned out. Really super nice. Now they're just, everything's easily accessible and has a place. Can't wait to use these little dauber holders, and yeah, substantially heavier. Anyways, hope that gave you some ideas. Opening up my tool cabinet, I use these latches from McMaster Carr. Hey guys, I'm really excited to share with you one of my latest projects. This is my leatherworking toolkit, and it's got about 34 3D printed items in it. Mostly tool holders, as you can see here, but it was really fun to design everything, give it a lot of thought, and get everything organized and put away. I'll kind of take you on the left hand side of it. These are kind of neat. These are for my punches, and what I did is I made the top one here so that I could take it off and keep it on the bench. That way I could utilize it. These are the tools that I use most common, and the way I designed it is that it slips in here, and I'm going to end up making a leather tool roll that'll slip right into this little curved area here. So that was the idea behind that. I also printed a chest of drawers. How many people can say they did that? Which is really cool. So it keeps a lot of my little items in here. This is 3D printed as well for the holder for my mauls, and more specialized tool holders here for all my stitching irons. This little tool holder here is for, and here has needles. Whole bunch of custom hammer holders. In each one of these are different. I actually am going to remake this one. I didn't get the size quite right. But it's really cool to be able to just have a place for everything, and it just worked out really neat. I still have a few things that I want to do to it, but for the most part, it's pretty much got everything that it's gonna have. These worked out really slick. All these little holders for all these specialty edgers, all my knife holders. These are for my swivel knives. This little special custom holder here. And then I made these little cubbies here are all 3D printed. And this was basically 3D printed in two parts. What I did is I did the upper part, and then I did this little lower part and just fused them together with the Loctite glue that I really like. And they turned out pretty cool. This is that brown that I had a kind of a difficult time with. I mean, it turned out okay, but it's just it ended up flowing through the extruder quite different. This center part here I can take out, and it has a lot of my specialty, some specialty punches, rivet sets, and that type of thing. This was printed with that translucent, HT translucent color fab material. Normally this one, it's printed really thin, it is fairly translucent, but it didn't turn out quite that well in this, but it still looks okay, and it's very functional. This was a really neat thing to design. These are my plier holders. These are special pliers used, dentists, orthodontists I think use these most, but I have a nice set of those that I use a lot, and so those have a nice spot. Here's some special punches, leather punches with the holders here. I even made a little thing for my skiving tool. Has a little hanger right here, 3D printed. Here's a little tiny thread holder that I made, 3D printed. I could actually put a pencil in here. One of the first leather projects I had to make was this leather handle for the top of it. It's really cool to be able to make these things when you've got big, huge hands, because I could make it to fit me. The way I open and close it is just, it's hinged, and then just use these latches here to draw it in tight.